A very good evening to you, South Africa, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas and looking forward to the year ahead. And what a year it has been, right? From the budget impasse earlier this year, remember that, to South Africa's relationship with the United States. It's been eventful, to say the least. And look, we faced many challenges and struggled, some personal. And on that score, my hope for you is that you and your family have won, yeah? Or at least in the process of winning some of these battles. It's important as a nation, as a collective, that we all win. There are also some issues we share as a collective, as a nation. The recent commissions of inquiry, Parliament's ad hoc committee, it has exposed some of the problems we need to tackle as a collective. The question then becomes, how do we safeguard the integrity of institutions and the affected parties or accused persons, while at the same time maintaining public confidence in these institutions? Tonight, we will reflect on some of these stories that gave this nation pause. It leads us to the question of the week, and we ask you, what stories stood out for you this year that gave you and your family pause for thought? Let us know at SABC News_TV. I'll get you some perspective in a short while. Now, onto our regular Word on the Street feature. Took to various streets of Johannesburg, seeking diverse insights and perspectives on the various issues that we had to deal with this year. And this is what you had to say. Take a look.
I think the most special story that stood out for me definitely has to be Kaizer Chiefs ending the 10-year drought by beating Orlando Pirates in the Nedbank Cup final, 10 May 2025 at Moses Mabhida Stadium. If you follow football, you would have noticed that we went to a lot of finals, played Al Ahly, we played TS Galaxy, we played Mamelodi Sundowns in the Telkom knockout, I think that was in 2015. And all of them defeated us. But when we played against our arch rivals, our bitter rivals, our neighbors, that's when we were actually able to break the drought. And I think for me that was exceptional.
For me, what stood out the most is the level of corruption that we are facing. And for me, it's just so sad that communities are, going through these hardships, not because South Africa doesn't have the economy is there, but corruption is eating into our economy. And for me, that is very sad.
For me personally, the story that stood out for me was the fact that the next GU summit, Trump is threatening to exclude South Africa from that actual summit. The irony is that we've successfully, as a country, hosted the one that just took place this year.
For me, it would be the Lieutenant General Vilakazi from KZN. Yeah, that guy really stood out, and he really showed the potential of SABC and what they're capable of, in terms of combating crime. Yeah, that really stood out for me. All of the stories that were coming out even on social media and on mainstream media as well, like his work and a lot of the effort that he's been putting in trying to combat crime, like it stood out for me. Yeah.
The story that came out for me this year was the Madlanga story, the Madlanga Commission. It stood up for me because some things came up that were always in hiding.
As always, we value your thoughts. Throughout the year, you've been giving us your perspectives, and we really, really appreciate it. Now, to help me unpack some of the biggest issues of 2025 in studio, we have political analyst, Professor Suzanne Booysen, joining us. Thank you so much indeed, Prof, for your time. Also, economist Thabiso Mongane, who's joining us virtually, and then legal expert, advocate Jazz Vilakazi will join us a little later on. But Prof and Thabiso, if you can indulge me just a bit. I just want to set the scene for our viewers a bit and start off with South Africa's relationship with the United States, right? From South Africa's ambassador to the US being expelled, Ibrahim Rasool, to genocide allegations which intensified, as you know, in the United States political circles. And who can forget President Cyril Ramaphosa's meeting with US President Donald Trump in May this year at the White House. Here's some of the highlights from that Oval Office meeting. Take a look.
The man of D-Day in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man.
Death of people. Death. Horrible death. Death. I don't know. To pick anyone, white South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws. And this is all, I mean, I'll give these to you. So when you say, what would I like to do? I don't know what to do. Look at this. White South African couple say that they were attacked violently. And,
President Trump, when will you go and see for yourself if it isn't?
well, I could do that. Look, here's burial sites all over the place. These are all white farmers that are being buried.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now
The farmers are black. The farmers are not black. I don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers, and you saw all those grave sites, and those are people that loved ones going, I guess on a Sunday morning, they told me, to pay respect to their loved ones that were killed. Their heads chopped off. They died violently.
So much has happened since then. Professor Susan Booysen, thank you once again for your time. And so much has been said since then, especially post G20 summit held here in South Africa. I guess the question is that many have on the tip of their tongues is, can we pull this back? What would it take to get this relationship on track?
No, given the level of irrationality, disregard of fact, every piece of solid information just rolling off President Donald Trump's back like water off the duck's back, given that that is the person South Africa deals with, it almost seems like we'll have to sit it out and wait for President Donald Trump either to get called to account by his own people, or worst comes to worst, that he sits out that term.
Right.
Now, he's so irrational and so disdainful of all fact that it actually, and that reputation is there worldwide, that it actually makes it very easy for South Africa to come out with in good standing on this. Given that Donald Trump really hasn't got that credibility, not increasingly we've been seeing quite a bit of evidence not among his own people either. But he still has so much power as President of the United States. One cannot deny that. And he is going to use that power. He has been using it left, right, and center in several places, on several countries around the world. So, and given this power, and this is a global force speaking, there's really limited things that South Africa can do.
Right.
South Africa in the end didn't come out too poorly in terms of the tariffs. Yes, there are huge tariffs, for example, hugely impacting the car industry, motor vehicle industry in South Africa. But then also there have been the critical minerals and South Africa's continuous exports of that, and the fact that the US was also quite selective in which ones they upheld. And so quite a few of the other items that US imports from South Africa were exempt in the end.
Right.
And so there were, yes, some industries took a heavy knock, but overall in terms of balance of payment and trade, South Africa didn't come out looking too badly.
Right.
But on the more political side,
Yes.
it takes time.
I want to talk about the political side, but
Yes.
Thabiso, let me just bring you in. Sentiment on the ground that I've heard, leave America alone. If they want to go on with the American first policies, let them be. Let's look for other trading partners. Easier said than done.
I don't think that's a credible argument, Blaine. What we must come to accept is the fact that America makes up 25% of the world's GDP, 4% of its population.
Right.
And those numbers are so credible because they present an entire market force, but also a market that's driven by, consumption and consuming. So that's why, the export tariffs were supposed to really hurt other countries in the advantage of America, but it didn't really turn out that way because at the end of the day, there was no base to then support what would then be the reduction in exports coming from other countries into that country. So, it's really making things a bit lousy for Americans. Prices have gone up on certain items. The cost of living has gone high. We saw the new mayor of New York basically got in on that ticket. And the essence of that is to actually say that at the end of the day, Donald Trump has been more detrimental for his own population than he has for the bullying tactics he's tried to actually employ on other countries, and that's just the sad part for Americans. So I think Prof Booysen is quite right. If they don't hold him accountable, and he finishes out his term, it might be a bit more detrimental for the American people.
How do you think, Prof, that South Africa came out of all of this in terms of its performance on the world stage, led by, of course, the president of this country? How do you think he handled it?
I think it was handled pretty well because South Africa made sure everything was running smoothly, and as a world stage event, I believe it was impressive, and many people thought that way. So, and it was a very important event for South Africa to host. We are not invited next year to the next one, but there are several voices who promise they will speak out. One can, of course, not bargain on that too much because people will get on with the job and will get on with the next G20.
Right.
Some other issues have been seeded and they can perhaps grow. So many other issues, and also issues that South Africa puts very, very strongly on those ones of inclusivity and diversity, etc., etc. And those are very uncomfortable issues for President Donald Trump. But South Africa has put it on the agenda, on the G20 agenda. Perhaps some of them will take root and some of the seeds may continue delivering dividends in due course. I don't think it's the end of the world to sit out for one term of G20 because President Donald Trump actually makes South Africa look very good in the sense that he's trying to do this way out sanction.
To maintain this what we try to portray as a diplomatic approach to world global issues, to sidestep provocation, I would assume that we're going to go through a lot, being that we were supposed to be part of the Troika that was supposed to be assisting the United States when they host the G20 next year. But what is an elegant way of handling this messy situation?
Probably just to show that South Africa is more mature. We believe in certain issues. We have got a principled position in world politics, and that South Africa is proud and will continue of that, and will continue along that line. I think just going in with dignity and playing the game South Africa's own way will show that we are actually better than and bigger than the issue that Trump tries to put at our doorstep.
Thabiso, taking a principled stance from a South African point of view, will that hold us in good stead in terms of investment, in terms of long-term economy?
I think that it will, Blaine. I mean, if you look at the recent G20 conference, you had a lot of American companies, for instance, that were fully backing and participating in that through the B20. And what this has actually shown is that, you know, this new brand of South African diplomacy is really enabling us to improve our positioning and footing on the global investment front. We saw ourselves actually get off of the grey list. And we've seen now recently how we've actually then gotten a better scoring from Moody's in terms of our credit rating. Yes. So these reforms, this new, staccato positioning that we have when it comes to our international relations and diplomacy seems to be bearing fruit in the right direction.
Yeah. Thabiso, we'll leave it there for now with regards to the United States. I want to take a quick break. After the break, South Africa's economy. We've left it off with Thabiso. Now, it's very much in sharp focus, right? And the need to attract investment, to promote inclusive growth, to create jobs. Topical, we'll discuss next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical as we wrap up the year that was. Let's remind you about the question of the week. We're asking you, what story stood out for you this year that I guess gave you pause for thought? Let us know. Send us your thoughts at SABC News_TV. Now, the budget impasse was definitely one of the top stories this year, right? I had to frequent Cape Town more often than I usually do. But here's the TikTok. Let's show the viewers, Kani, with regards to how we got to that stage. The budget first tabled on the 12th of March, retabled on the 21st of May, and then the final budget passed on the 23rd of July. Now, here were some of the arguments that the three biggest parties gave for the then budget impasse and how to move forward. Take a look.
We have decided to adjourn proceedings for a date to be determined by the programming committee. There has not been agreement in terms of parties in the executive to actually find one another in proposals of the budget.
Let the Minister of Finance come and say whatever I wanted to say. We don't want to hear rumors. We hear very disturbing rumors that the VAT would have been increased by 2%.
You are not alone in the GNU. We have an equal say, and that we will continue to fight for every single person in this country, most particularly the poor. We support this postponement.
We agree with the postponement, Honorable Speaker, to allow the executive to finalize those contentious issues that they are dealing with in the interest of all South Africans.
Professor Susan Booysen and economist Thabiso Mongane still with us. Prof, I guess this budget deadlock earlier this year, I don't think anybody thought for 1 second that reaching consensus with the first budget for the Government of National Unity will be easy. But I wonder, what have we learned since in terms of this administration's alignment in terms of the economy?
So much of this budget, of this government of national unity, this coalition government, really depends on getting the economy right. Not just is that central to the agreement that was reached that constituted this coalition government, but we have seen that the economy has not been improving, and that casts much aspersion on the justification of this coalition government. Right. So it really depends on getting things in the economy right. So far, not too, up to the end of this year, things not been going that well. Right. But there are small points of pickup generally in the economy. Overall, I think just the smoothness of subsequent deliberations on financial matters in government shows that the coalition government has actually, nationally, has actually taken things to heart, and that they have seen talk is necessary, negotiations are necessary. Don't negotiate through the media and brinkmanship on the last moment, at the last moment before the budget has to be passed. We have learned we learned very much about coalition governments in South Africa and South Africa's particular way, wild and wonderful often, to handle coalitions. But towards the end of this year, we did see another lekgotla between the coalition partners, GNU people, and there were some smooth resolutions that emerged from that. And that was in line with a promise earlier this year. Then when the troubles really started around the budget, it had been promised that by September this year there would be further negotiations to ensure that the next cycle would run smoothly. It was a bit later than September, but those negotiations followed. And so far again, things seem to be running more smoothly. Of course, there are always problems in a coalition. That's how South Africa does its coalitions. But I think lessons have been learned all around.
Talk to us about these lessons, Thabiso, and I guess possible sticky points still with regards to the agreement on government funding priorities.
I mean, if you look at the lessons that Dr. Booysen is actually talking about, we can actually take them from how the president and his executive authority orchestrated that Bosporat for all the GNU political leaders. It was a very important lesson in really being able to consolidate not only the day-to-day operations of the GNU, but also just coalition politics as a mechanism for governance. And I think that was one of the most interesting things that I actually took heed of this year, really seeing how that came through from that process. But I mean, if we look at how it's actually affected or some of the much more in-depth financial lessons, is that we need to, or the government has realized that it actually needs to start getting ahead of, government operational cycles and actually start to plan and discuss and get, consensus around budgets and, the financial direction of this country much quicker. So those cycles are now starting to really gain traction, and you can see how the government is really then moving to do that through the GNU coalition.
The need to attract investment, to promote inclusive growth, to create jobs, obviously key at this stage of South Africa's juncture in trying to recover. But talk to us about the green shoots that you are seeing emerging.
I mean, we've seen how the commodity prices, for instance, have really been, quite a refreshing tale of how industry, specifically mining in South Africa, is really then gone up and up. That surge in those commodity prices meant that we could potentially then start to get more money within the country. PMI, as much as it hasn't really been that impressive, we've seen how PMI has actually stayed stable regardless of all of these export tariffs that have actually been imposed on us. But even more so, I think one thing that was a highlight was really just looking at the financial task force's grey list and us being removed off of there, which was testament to the reform we've implemented in the country through this GNU coalition and through this executive authority. And what that has really told us as South Africans is that there's now a very concerted and really pressured push to recapacitate and support these institutions that are really responsible for not only fiscal direction, but also looking at it from all sorts of other governance issues that might actually emerge from the South African story. So I think that was something that was quite interesting. Economically, I think we're seeing that South Africa's economy has been quite resilient up against a very, very turbulent global economy. Regardless of what's actually been thrown in front of us, I think that we've managed to really fight the headwinds and stay ahead of any issues. And that was really brought about by the Reserve Bank and the National Treasury team, how they got ahead of inflation, how they were really running those cycles. It was absolutely incredible, and really then created a lot of space and room financially for South Africans to be able to navigate, tough economic times.
How much stock do you put in credit ratings agencies? I see Moody's ratings has kept South Africa's credit ratings at BA2 with a stable outlook unchanged. It follows, of course, the recent credit rating upgrade by S&P Global. How do we are expected to read both of these?
Well, I think we need to be quite honest. We need foreign markets, financial markets, to actually go and raise capital. And these ratings are now where the data is housed on what kind of risk we are as a country when we are borrowing that money. And essentially, we need to always be managing those ratings because they are a measure of our financial responsibility and prudent behavior towards, how the government and this institution in this country manages its financial responsibilities. So it's a good thing that we are on BA2, but it really doesn't improve our credit standing at all. But what it does show is that it shows that there's a confidence in the reform levels within the country's financial markets, within the country's management of its economy, specifically around compliance and how that work has actually been unfolding. So as much as, yes, credit ratings, some people might want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and really discard them as being, an imaginary figment of some Western construct, but it really isn't. What it is like you and me, Blaine, if we go into a bank and want to lend money or borrow money, want to borrow money from a bank, there's a credit score, a credit analysis that needs to be done on us, on our financial behavior. And that's exactly what these credit ratings do. They really measure that. Whether it's fair or not, that's a different debate. I think that we need to actually then consistently look at that, but at the end of the day, it's a very necessary way for us to exist within the financial or the global financial economy.
In practical terms, Prof, at the end of the day, as Thabiso says, people want a job, they want to earn a decent wage, they want to support their family. How is testing the temperature of views on the ground currently? How should South Africa be processing all of this information coming to them towards the end of this year?
Well, bottom line is that unemployment in South Africa remains ghastly. It is so high, and it is quite a miracle that we have the level of restfulness and peacefulness and lack of even more disruptive protests around the country, given now dismal living conditions and lived experiences of such a large proportion of South Africans are. So it really will be the task, I believe, for the new year, to get more action in that. We always hear about so much that has been done, new projects, new campaigns, but they have not been making a difference. We need definitive recalibration of that unemployment, countering unemployment wheel. It sounds like a cliche, but really, I believe so much of our peace and what we can be proud of as South Africans. We cannot be proud of South Africans with a dismal level of employment growth, with a continuous battle, massive battle, ordinary human beings, South Africans, to get food on the table. We need new initiatives, we need new thoughts, and I can only hope that a new year will make a much better contribution on that front.
Somebody that has made an immense contribution is Thabiso. Thank you so much indeed, sir. We'll have to let you go. Thank you for your expertise and have a great New Year's. Appreciate your time. Prof, you'll stay with us because after the break, we're going to bring in advocate Jazz Vilakazi as well. The Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi allegations being probed. We will talk about that next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. No doubt the story that dominated headlines this year was the probe into criminality, political interference, and corruption in the criminal justice system. Let's take a look now at the timeline. How did we get here? Remember, July 6th, KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi makes these serious allegations. Then on July 13th, President Ramaphosa announces the establishment of a commission of inquiry to probe these allegations. Remember, we also had Parliament's ad hoc committee running almost at the same time. Some of the key witnesses, Masemula, Kumalo, Sibiya, Mqunu, Qele, Mokhotsi, Matala, list goes on. Let's remind you, though, how it all started.
On the 31st of December, 2024, the Minister of Police, Mr. Senzo Mqunu, issues a letter to disband the political killings task team and to suspend the filling of vacancies within crime intelligence. On the 1st of January, The letter is issued on the 31st. On the 1st of January 2025, Mr. Brown Mokhotsi sends a WhatsApp to Vusimuzi Cat Matlala, and it reads as follows, I quote, "I have arranged a meeting for Sibiya and the minister. They must have a solution." And it follows another message. "The task team that came to your house and harassed you have been dissolved. As we speak, they are bringing all docket to Sibiya." Further analysis of the chats indicates that Vusimuzi Cat Matlala is financially supporting the Minister of Police and Mr. Brown Mokhotsi's political endeavors. The war that we are facing is so serious that it deals with high-level senior officers within the criminal justice system. Therefore, it is important for us to go into a combat mode. It is important for me to make sure that I take on the enemy directly.
To address these allegations and the implications of these allegations, I'm establishing a judicial commission of inquiry that will be chaired by Acting Deputy Chief Justice Booysen Madlanga. Justice Madlanga will be assisted by Advocate Sesi Baloyi, Senior Counsel, and Advocate Sandile Kumalo, Senior Counsel. The Commission will investigate allegations relating to the infiltration of law enforcement, intelligence, and associated institutions within the criminal justice system by criminal syndicates.
So that's how we got to this point. Advocate Jazz Vilakazi joins the panel now. Thank you, sir, for your time, legal expert. No doubt there's been entertaining times over the last couple of weeks in terms of the ad hoc committee, in terms of the Madlanga Commission. But there's been serious allegations being leveled here. Gave this country, this nation pause. People want justice. They want justice yesterday. Understandable in terms of the urgency. But how do you balance justice with public expectation?
Blaine, thank you for having me on your show. In law, we have a quote: "The law grinds slowly but grinds fine." And that means that with President Ramaphosa's starting of this commission, we need to give it time to unfold in respect of witnesses, in respect of evidence that has to be led. It's important for the public to know that a commission is investigative in nature, as opposed to a court of law, which goes on to find guilt and looks at liability. In this case, ultimately, the goal of the presidency is to come up with a report from Justice Madlanga to say, here with the problem areas in South Africa, here with the implicated persons, you may then press charges against those people. And that's how you then have to, the public needs to understand that this balance, unfortunately, does take time to play out, and it won't be a solution as in tomorrow, even next week.
Right. Acronyms that are burnt into our minds. PKTT. You heard allegations of criminality within the criminal justice system. Prof, have we become a different nation since hearing these testimonies from the various witnesses?
I think South Africa, end of this year, is a dramatically different place from what it was before these allegations started rolling in public. It was an eye-opener. We know there have been previously been other investigations into the security system, into the July 2021 unrest, for example. And we have learned over time that there are problems, there are big problems, but I don't think we estimated that the problems could be as big as these ones that have unfolded, to the extent that one sometimes wonders who is actually in charge of our South African politics, which other figures who just were lucky enough not to be mentioned this time around perhaps are waiting hidden in the wings to date, and that they may also become revealed. And yes, we really look forward to seeing informed opinion of, for example, these justices on what exactly transpired, is their impression of transpired, who may be held responsible, should be held responsible in future. But I think there's also a huge responsibility on the politicians directly to take, not just to let the law take its course, but to also take political action to ensure that the system, criminal justice system and all related aspects are rebuilt, that South Africans can again look in confidence at not just perhaps a few of the top justices in South Africa, but that the whole system, the whole policing system, the whole security system, because the breach of trust is far-reaching, and South Africa is different now, even if we were in the past had skepticisms about the effectiveness and the integrity of security services.
Right. The way evidence was led, the strategies used by the evidence leader, the questions that were asked by MPs at the ad hoc committee. Do you think it was effective?
Yes and no. In terms of the Madlanga Commission, definitely yes. Because the idea behind the commission is that they must get to understand what the facts are and what is, in terms of separating lies from actual facts. So it almost becomes a court process in that regard. There must be cross-examination, which is quite robust, of the witnesses. On the other hand, with Parliament, what we are seeing is we're seeing two parallel processes. However, Parliament is not in as strong a position as the Madlanga Commission, for instance, because with the Madlanga Commission, the President will then be able to, once he takes those recommendations on board, instruct the NPA to then proceed. But with Parliament, the only thing that they are actually gathering is just facts. And that's where it's a bit challenging. I was watching Mr. Matlala being asked about his children. How is that relevant to the issue at hand? So yes, there's been beautiful questioning for the general public. However, some of it has not really led us forward, has not put us forward.
How would you weigh up substance versus performance, Prof?
In both these bodies?
Yes. Well, especially at the ad hoc committee.
Especially at ad hoc, yes. The substance was, I would say, a bit elusive at times, and the systematic, there's also a limited period, a few minutes that allocated per party, and they had to make it work. And sometimes it was performance politics, their own political parties, bugbears and preoccupations, but very often also very profound, very systematic, very thorough questions that sometimes had more of a human touch, maybe not always appropriate. But the questions, certainly, I think they also helped shed light. There were some additional witnesses that we did not see in public on the Madlanga Commission. So, yes, a lot of circumstantial evidence also came, that I thought was very useful. But I think it was useful, perhaps not as strictly useful in a legal sense, but we did learn. I did learn a lot from the parliamentary deliberations as well.
Something that we also learned towards the end of the Madlanga Commission this year was the re-examination of Senzo Mngunu by his legal team. What did you make about that process?
Well, re-examination is generally there to simply try and iron out the issues where a witness has gone wrong in terms of cross-examination. You then come in and try and bed down those feathers, as it were. It didn't take the commission far, because ultimately the cross-examination of the minister was pretty telling in terms of the concessions that he's made. You know, one of the issues was the word immediately.
Yes.
Which really, the reality is you should just look at a dictionary to see what the word immediately means, and it means right now. So the minister couldn't really escape that web. Also, the other issue where re-examination then is not as effective is the 8 or so complaints that he receives. And then he decides to disband the PKTT without any investigation, without applying his mind to it rationally. So, yes, the re-examination aspect was relatively new when it came to the minister, but I don't think that it's had the desired effect of taking the commissioner, the chairperson and the commissioner away from the central thrust of the allegations against the minister.
I wonder, Prof, from listening to all this testimony, to what extent is it shaping the political direction that this country is heading in?
That is certainly such an important question. I think it really is, because tolerance for the misdemeanor at top level, top officials, top security officials, top government ministers, I think we're going to see much less tolerance, much more healthy skepticism in future as to what is transpiring, who is acting in whose interest, who is being influenced in whom. We have been, as South Africans, we've been very good at asking those questions over a very long time. But I think we have gone up a few bars. And I think it will take a lot of persuasion in future to become a minister of police in South African system. Also, not just because of the challenges you might face, but because the rot has been so well exposed now. Not just some rot at top level, but also much lower down.
Right. Advocate, is there any grey areas that, especially from the Madlanga Commission, that you would think that needs to be ironed out further, or you would like to have more information in terms of the line of questioning from the evidence leaders, in terms of what came out from the witnesses' testimony?
Yes, I think what South Africa probably is really wanting to hear at the Madlanga Commission is Cat Matlala himself. Because if you go back then to the earlier clip that you showed, where General Mkhwanazi implicates Brown Makhotsi and Matlala as having contacts with the minister. And we'll remember that the minister throughout the year has vacillated in respect of his relationship. Now, South Africa then definitely needs to hear from Cat Matlala. Because then that will shed, and not just that, but the evidence that will go in it will shed a lot of light in respect of how far this relationship ran. And it will also then shed a lot of light in terms of urban policing, especially Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, and that Commissioner Mkhwanazi and his role in this entire thing. So that's the one area where we should go to. The other one perhaps is the vigorous cross-examination. Without a doubt, it's been very helpful, because the Commission needs to gather evidence. I think Chuckelson, the way he's handled himself, and all the other evidence leaders have been very thorough. I'm looking forward then to hearing Mr. Matlala, especially considering what he said in Parliament and what he's going to say at the Commission.
It's human nature to draw early conclusions. I wonder the impact that this is having on the judiciary itself as we hear all these testimonies come out. I've just remembered that I wrote down Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's earlier statement on the judiciary, saying, he said that some of the information that is at hand is covert, recordings are there which he has listened, hence he has drawn some conclusions. If this is in fact true, what sort of impact is it likely going to have on the judiciary?
Well, it's quite a huge impact. Make no mistake about it, our judiciary is overworked. Now consider that a judge has got 50, 60 odd matters that they need to hear, and now they're removed out of the system. So that's the one issue. The second issue obviously revolves around the Office of the Chief Justice. She's been very forthright in respect of correspondence that she's released. If you have evidence, bring it forward to us. You'll remember we've impeached a few judges now in the last few years. So we are going to very likely get to a position where we have to impeach a few more judges if the evidence does tie up. And that's where the JSC comes into effect in order then to test the fitness of that judge. So the impact is, if one considers what General Mkhwanazi has said, I for one don't think that if there is a rot in the judicial system, it can't be limited, for instance, to one province.
Right. If there is a diminished confidence in police, diminished confidence in the judiciary, what impact, immediate impact, is it likely to have on this nation?
Huge, huge. It is probably already playing out, but it can be even bigger. And of course that interfaces with declines in trust of South Africans in so many of our public institutions, in a presidency, in parliament, in the electoral commission. All of these institutions, crucial state institutions, have been suffering declines in the trust that South Africans have afforded them in the last few years. And all of this brought together really, it reinforces that so much needs to be done, so much improvement needs to be brought in levels of credibility and integrity of public leadership. Without that, South Africans are increasingly just going to rely on their own devices to keep food on the table and to keep order in their own lives.
To what extent do you think these allegations will be used as a tool in the upcoming local government elections?
It could very well be quite important. The direct interfaces are not that clear at this stage, but it is about government and malfeasance in government, neglect of duty of public officials and elected representatives to really act in the interest of South African citizens. And we have seen so many cases of that extending in different ways to the work of this commission, but in certain ways to the local government as well.
The interest of South African citizens, the need to strive for high conviction rates, but not at the expense of justice. What does that mean to you?
Well, I suppose there's two perceptions. The first one is that justice must be seen to be done as much as it is done. Now, it's quite evident that South Africa, if they don't clamor for it, definitely need convictions, and also we need charges to be pressed. One related aspect, of course, of that is the SIU at the moment, with their near flawless record when it comes to convictions. So where the stumbling block may be is certainly how far does President Ramaphosa want to take the recommendations? Because, as the professor has said, the malfeasance that is in there, if it costs the ANC elections, votes at the voting booth, then that might give him pause for thought. However, overall, in the greater scheme of things, it is important for South Africa not to stop at the end of the Madlanga Commission. It's important for the NPA to run with those charges and the president to give the go-ahead.
2026 is no doubt shaping up to be an interesting year. Thank you so much indeed to both of you, Professor Susan Booysen as well as Advocate Jazz Vilakazi. No doubt value added indeed. And a happy new year to you both.
Thank you.
All right. Before we go, here's my take. Look, during the season, we are encouraged to be jolly, right? Easier for some than others. People are dealing with a lot. Understatement of the year, right? And couple that with the negativity out there. It's a recipe for despair. But we don't have to give in to this despair. The word I purposely repeat almost on a weekly basis is the word better. More excellently, more effectively, better, right? For many, Christmas is a time for opening gifts, but it also affords us as a nation to open up our hearts. Let's disagree with decency. We can't let politics reinforce our worst instincts. We need to build on our best instincts, recognize the blessings, pay it forward, strive to be trustworthy. These are the incremental steps that we can take in our pursuit of better. And that's my take. Have a great build up to the new year, everyone. I'll chat to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.